In this video, we are gonna build this web application from scratch using a new Python package called fastHTML. This is a digital guestbook where everyone can leave a message. After hitting the submit button, the message will be stored in a database. And the crazy part is, this web application is entirely written in Python, no JavaScript at all. However, if you know a bit of HTML, that can be definitely helpful. So in this video, I will show you everything you need to know to get started with fastHTML to build your own projects. We will start from scratch and I will show you each step along the way. At the end, we will even deploy our web application for free so that you have your own guestbook live on the internet. And without further ado, let us get started. First things first, you want to head over to the official fastHTML documentation. You can find the link in the description box. The first step is to install the package. Just copy this command and run it in your terminal or command prompt. In my case, I already have it installed. Next up, copy the sample code and paste it into a Python file. I've named my file main.py. To start your web server, just type Python followed by the name of your file in the terminal. Alright, and now you will see that the application is running on your local host on port 5001. To open the app, just click on the following link. If you see the same error as I do here, then don't worry. You just need to change the address to localhost and then it should work fine. Alright, and here's our Hello World website. Now, before we go any further, let's take a moment so that I can explain the code. FastHTML combines fastAPI and HTMX. If you've never used either of these before, then don't worry. In a nutshell, fastAPI is used as the web server, so basically the backbone of our application. HTMX, on the other hand, is a JavaScript library. Simply put, it extends the functionality of HTML without requiring you to write any JavaScript, so it makes HTML more interactive. And fastHTML basically combines fastAPI with HTMX. But I think it will be easier if I explain this with our example app here. So after the import, we are initializing the app and the router instances. Routes are like web pages within our website. In my case, we only have the root route, which is essentially our homepage. And as I mentioned in the intro, it is now definitely helpful if you know some HTML, because here we have a div element, which is basically a section. And within that section, we've got a paragraph. And this is exactly what's rendered also on our website. Now, the interesting part is this hxget attribute here. This is where HTMX comes into play. So as I just mentioned, HTMX extends the capabilities of HTML. So in this case, it allows us to click on the paragraph and trigger a GET request to another route called change. Currently, we haven't set up the change route yet, which is why when I click on Hello World, we will see a 404 error in our terminal. So let me go back to the documentation and paste in the following snippet of code. Now we've created a change route, and this one will return just a paragraph. And when I save the file and refresh the website, check out what happens when I click on Hello World. Now we will see nice to be here. And that is because HTMX has replaced the entire paragraph with the HTML content returned from the change route. In this case, it is just another paragraph. But later in this video, we will see that you can return any HTML you like. Alright, and with that in mind, let me show you another cool feature of fastHTML, because it comes already with some built-in styling. To demonstrate this, let me wrap our content in a titled element. When I refresh a site, you will notice that the styling has changed. This is because the titled element wraps a container around the content, and by doing so, it automatically applies a CSS library called Pico. And if you never heard or used CSS before, then don't worry. It is basically just to style our HTML elements. Now, if you head over to the Pico documentation, you can also see how the different HTML elements will be styled with Pico. But if you want to use any other CSS library like Tailwind for example, that is also totally possible. You have all the flexibility you need. But in this video, we will stick with Pico. Okay, and with that said, let me show you how you can build a multi-page application instead of a single-page application. And actually, we've already done it. We just use HTMX to get the content from the second page. So if I remove the HTMX attribute and instead use a regular link, we will have a multi-page application. This means when I refresh a website, we will now have a link. And when I click on it, we will be redirected to the second page. And you will also notice that the URL has changed, so indicating that we moved to a different page. Alright, and that covers the basic we need to build our Guestbook application. And if you need some inspiration, I actually recommend checking out the Pico documentation. Here you can see the different HTML elements and also how it will be rendered later on our website. So for our Guestbook, for example, I want to create a form with the fields for a name, an email and a button. So something very similar to this example here. Alright, and with that in mind, let me delete the demo code and just give our app a title with an emoji. By the way, if you're on a Windows machine and you also want to use an emoji, you can open the emoji picker by pressing Ctrl and the period key on your keyboard. Next up, I could write all the code directly in the return statement, but to keep things organized, I'm gonna call a function instead. And this function will return all the HTML elements that I want to display on the web page. Alright, and I think it makes sense if I first type out the entire code, refresh the website, and then I will explain it. So first we have the title. Then we will render the content, which includes another paragraph with some italic text, a link that redirects to my YouTube channel, a divider, and lastly some more text. And as you can see, I'm basically just using HTML elements here, but in Python, which is pretty cool. And just to test things out, when I click on my name, I will be redirected to my YouTube channel. Alright, so far so good. So next up, instead of this text, I actually want to implement a form. And as I mentioned earlier, for that you basically just need to know the HTML element name. Let me show you what I mean. So on the Pico documentation, here on the right side, you will see the HTML example. Now with fastHTML, I can use the same HTML text but in Python. So we have a form, and inside this form we have a field set. And within the field set, we've got two input fields with additional attributes and a submit button. And that's basically it. Now we can take the form and replace our placeholder down here. And when I save my code and go to our website and refresh it, this is what it looks like. Currently it doesn't do anything, so when I enter some data and submit it, by default we will trigger a GET request. But we will take care of that in just a moment. And as I was scrolling down the Pico documentation, I also saw a form with grouped elements. To achieve this kind of style, you just need to assign the role group to the field set. And I think to make it even easier to configure our web application later on, instead of hard-coding the maximum length for the input fields directly into the elements, I will create two separate variables up here and then replace the numbers with the variable names. Alright, and with that in place, let me save the code and refresh our application. Now we can see that the form has been grouped. Next up, let's take care of displaying the messages. In our Guestbook, I want to display the name, the message, and also the time of the submission. And I thought it might make sense to use the article element for this. So here in the documentation, you can see how this would look like on our website. We've got a nice card with a header, body, and footer text. So instead of the placeholder, let's insert that into our code. In the footer, I again used some italic text and wrapped it around with a small element. And with that in place, our website will now look like this. And to be honest, this is actually pretty much how our final Guestbook should look like. But later on, we will want to render the messages dynamically. And to do that, I think it makes sense if we further split the code a bit. So instead of placing the article here, I will cut it out and put it in a new function called render message. So up here, I will now define this function and paste in the code. Now when I refresh the application, nothing has changed, but now we can use this function to render multiple messages. To demonstrate this, I'm gonna create another function. Here I have defined some sample messages in a Python list. Inside the list we have our sample data. And just a heads up, later on we will fetch this data from our database. But for now, let's keep things simple here. So now that I have my list, I can use the render message function to transform each entry into an article. Let me show you what I mean. In the render message function, I will add an argument that will be the dictionary. Now I can access this dictionary to retrieve the name, the message, and also the timestamp. Okay, and with that in place, in the render message list function, we can now iterate over our messages and return each article inside a div element. Just remember to use the asterisk in front so that we can unpack all the elements. And with that in place, we should be now able to render all the messages instead of just one. So to try it out, let me save the code and reload our site. And now you will see the 2 messages displayed on the page. Great, so this is all working. Now the next step is to replace the hard-coded messages with the data from our database. fastHTML actually comes already with an SQLite database included, but for this video I'm going to use a Postgres database from Supabase. To get started, you just need to create a free Supabase account. The link will be in the description. After you have created your account, you will want to create a new organization. Basically, you just need to provide a name for the organization. Once that is set up, you will want to create a new project. So I'm going to call this project my Guestbook and give it a password. After creating the project, you will see a screen with your API keys. These keys are important for accessing our project, so let me copy the key to my clipboard. Next, in my project directory, I will create a .env file. In this file, you want to write Supabase key and paste in the key we just copied. Below that, I will define another key called Supabase URL. In here, you will want to copy and paste the following project URL. Alright, and with that in place, we can now create a table within our project. However, it might take a minute or two for our project to finish setting up. But once it's ready, you will be automatically redirected to your project. If not, then don't worry, you can also exit this page here from your dashboard later on. Once you are here, you will want to click on the table editor and then create a new table. Next, give this table a name. For our simple project, we won't need row level security, so I will deactivate it here. Next, you can define the columns. By default, there will be an ID and a created at column. I will keep the ID and then create 3 additional columns. One for the name, one for the message, and the last one for the timestamp. And for all of those columns, I will use a text type. Now, to be honest, for the timestamp, I think it would be best practice to store it as a timestamp object, but storing it as a text as I did here works also fine for our small project. Alright, and with that said and our table in place, we could also test things out by inserting some dummy data into the table. Okay, so now we have one entry in our database. Now we just need to retrieve this data with Python in our application. And luckily there's a Python SDK available for Supabase. To install it, open your command prompt or terminal and install it using pip. And since we are already here, let me also install the python.env package to access the values from the environment file, so the .env file we created earlier. And also I will install pytz, which we will use later on for creating the timestamp. Once those packages are installed, go back to your code. Here you will want to import OS, which is a standard Python package, so you don't need to install it, then the Supabase client and the .env package. With that in place, let me now first load the environment variables, which are currently stored in the .env file. And now that we have access to the Supabase key and the URL, we can initialize the Supabase client like so. Okay, good. So now we have a connection to our Supabase account and we can now retrieve all the messages from our table. To do that, you just need to specify the table name. And in our case, I want to select all the entries and order them by the ID. And from this response, I only want to get the data back, so just the entries. And this data will be in a list. So that means we can delete our dummy data and now just use the getMessages functions down here. And that's all there is to it. So let me place the code and my app side by side again. And when I refresh the page, you will see the entries from our database displayed on our website. Alright, now as the last step, we just need to implement a function to insert new data, so new entries, into our database. However, before doing that, let me quickly create a helper function to generate the timestamp. For that, I will import datetime from the datetime module. And again, this is a standard Python module, so you don't need to install anything extra. And I will also import pytz, which we just installed. Next, I will define the timestamp format. So this is how the timestamp will be rendered later on our website. To get the timestamp, I will create a new function. And in my case, I'm using CET, which stands for Central European Time. But of course, feel free to change it to your needs and liking. Okay, now that we have the timestamp, let's add a message to our database. This function will take in a name and a message as the parameters. And inside this function, I will create and format the timestamp, and then insert the name, message and the timestamp into our table and execute it. So now that we have this function, we are almost done. Now we just need to call this function whenever we press the submit button. It should send a post request and triggers the submit message endpoint. Currently we don't have this endpoint defined, so let's define it next. So at the bottom, we will create a new route, which is called submit message. This route should only handle post request and take in 2 arguments, the name and the message. And these values will come from our form submission. So now that I have those values from our form, we can add a new entry to our database. Once that is done, I will return the updated message list. And here's also where the power of HTMX comes into play. For now, our app will work, but with some strange behavior. Let me show you what I mean. When I enter a name and a message and press the submit button, our form will be replaced with all the messages from the database. The good news here is that the message has been indeed successfully saved in our database. We could also quickly check this if we are going back to our table, where we will now see the new entry we just submitted. However, currently we are replacing the entire form with whatever is returned from the submit message endpoint. Right now, that means we are returning the rendered message list, but what we actually want to do is to replace just the rendered messages list section down here. And we can easily achieve this with HTMX. All we need to do is to specify what exactly we want to replace. In our case, we want to replace the initial section where the messages are displayed. To do that, we can give this div element an ID like message list. This means whatever is returned from the submit message endpoint will replace the content in the message list div. We can also further specify what exactly should be replaced within the target. And as a little bonus, we can also reset the form after the post request has been sent. Alright, and that is all there is to it. Now when I reload the site and enter another message, we will now replace just the message list with the new content. Alright guys, and that's basically it, how you can create a dynamic web application in pure Python without writing any JavaScript code. Of course, there's a lot more to explore with fastHTML, but I hope this little project gives you already some ideas what you could do. Now as a final step, let me add a fav icon to the app and then we will deploy it. For the fav icon, I'm gonna create a new assets folder and paste in an image there. With that in place, you can specify in the headers that you want to include an icon from that folder. And now, when I reload the page, you will see our page icon up here. Okay, and with that, let's now deploy our application. First, I will initialize a new Git repository, but we need to be careful here. Because remember that we have our secret keys for Supabase and our environment variables. And we definitely don't want to include this in our Git commits. So to avoid that, we need to create a .𝗟𝗘𝗦𝗧𝗔𝗠𝗣𝗦 file. An easy way to do this is to navigate to the following website that generates the 𝗟𝗘𝗦𝗧𝗏 files. Just type in Python and click the following button. Then copy the text it generates, create a new .𝗟𝗘𝗦𝗧𝗏 file in a project directory and paste in the text in here. Okay, and now we are almost done. We just need one more thing, which is the requirement.txt file. This file is needed so that the web server later on knows exactly what kind of packages it needs to install, just like we did in our terminal. And one of the easiest way to create this kind of requirements file is actually to create it by using another package, which is called pip_r_eqs. You can simply install it by running the following command in your terminal or command prompt. Once that is installed, I will stop the current session by pressing Ctrl and C on my keyboard. Now in the terminal, while I'm still in my project directory, I will type pip_r_eqs and this will now create a new requirements.txt file for me. When you open this file, you will see all the packages we have installed throughout the video. Great, and with all that done, now let's push our code to GitHub. In my case, I will do this directly from VS Code. First, I will enter a commit message and then I will publish it to a public repository. Once that's done, you should see your code on GitHub. And this makes it now super easy to deploy the code using Vercel. Just head over to the Vercel website and create a new account. Again, you will find the link in the description box below. Once you're logged in, create a new project. Here you can choose the GitHub repository you want to import. So I will select the repository we just uploaded to GitHub. Next, you need to enter the environment variables. So for that, go back to your project and simply copy and paste the keys from your .env file. You will need your Supabase key and also the other one, which is the Supabase URL. Alright, and with that done, simply click on the deploy button. This might take a minute or two, but once it's finished, your app will be live on the internet. When you navigate to your page, you will see your guestbook. And just to test things out, I will submit another message. Alright, and this seems to be working. Okay guys, and that's how easy it is to create an entire web application using only Python. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.